It's time to bring you yet another amazing episode. And now, welcome your host.
Good to have you on the Backstory. My name is Omobola Stephen. I'm the host of the Backstory with Omobola Stephen. On the Backstory, we like to shine more light on what has not worked and what will make it work. We focus on government and politics topics with other subtopics like the society and culture, the environment, the science and technology, and also the economy. We realize that there's so much issues that is facing the global world today. There have been a lot of debates and counter debates on how things are turning out, and yet these problems and the issues seems not to be abating. Now, the questions on the minds of the audience of the Backstory with Omobola Stephen is, what are we doing wrong and how can we make things right? On the Backstory with Omobola Stephen, we want to pivot the positive changes and transformation the world needs to disruptive and yet constructive mindship conversations on these topics. Today, I have J.J Carrell, who is the former frontline agent and senior leader in the U.S. Border Patrol, on the podcast with me today. Thank you, J.J, for joining me on the show.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. And this is a very powerful topic that we're discussing because I believe it is the greatest threat to the Republic of the United States of America.
Absolutely. Really, it's a really deep and very great topic, and I'm looking forward to a great time indeed. Now, you've had a 24-year stint with the U.S. Border Patrol, especially working a decade on the San Diego-Tijuana border as a journeyman and also a supervisory border patrol agent. So our focus on today's show is on Trump's victory and his policies, which is rather setting the world on edge, especially as it regards the U.S. border. Now, the headline says, "Make America Safe Again." Now, President Trump will take bold action to secure the border and protect America communities, which includes ending Biden's catch and release policies, reinstating remain in Mexico, building the wall, ending asylum for illegal border crossers. He also talks about cracking down on all criminal sanctuaries and enhancing vetting and screening of aliens. Now, this is really big on the US citizens. What's your take on that, JJ?
This is long overdue. And in order to understand what Donald Trump is doing, we have to go back and understand what has happened to our nation in the last 4 years under Joe Biden. Joe Biden did catch and release. In my career as a journeyman agent all the way to a senior leader, I had contact with indirectly or directly over 100,000 people came through my stations. I released zero. Zero were released into America. Why? Because it's against the Immigration Nationality Act, the INA. You cannot release illegal aliens. Joe Biden arrested, his Border Patrol arrested approximately 12 million people, and 95 to 97% of all 12 million were released into America. He also allowed in, these are his numbers, not mine, and I don't agree with them, but I'm going to go with what he says. 3 million people crossed the border undetected, absconded, that's 15 million. Then he flew in or let them walk in through CBP One app, approximately 2 million more. So 17 million people came into America, 17 to 18 million people came into America in 4 years. We have no idea who they are. He released them all into America. I believe the number is closer to 30 million because 80% of the southern border was completely unmanned, meaning 1,600 miles of the 2,000 southern border, there was not one Border Patrol or law enforcement officer on the border. So we have 30 million people in America, plus the 22 million that was agreed upon that was already here illegally through an MIT Yale study in 2018 and 2019. So now we're over 50 million. 50 million people. Let's put this in context. Ireland, the whole nation of Ireland has less than 40 million people. So we allowed a complete other nation come into America. There's 195 nations, ma'am, on the planet Earth. Over 180 nationalities were arrested. 180, meaning the whole globe came into America. So what Donald Trump is doing works. You went from a Biden administration from the day one to the very last day in his office. We arrested between 5,000 and 20,000 people a day and released them all into America. Day one, not day 1,000, day one of President Trump's administration, he shut the border down on day one within 24 hours. So that proves my point that I have been stating ad nauseum that the Biden administration intentionally and strategically opened the border to fundamentally transform America. And what's that transformation? It was a demographic shift, not about race and ethnicity, because I told you 180 nations crossed this border. This was a demographic shift from citizens to non-citizens. That's how you change a nation. You create chaos. So what's Donald Trump did? He shut the border down. The military's on the border. So now we're at about 200 to 500 people arrested every single day. He's closing the waterways on the east and west coast, and he's trying to secure the Canadian border as well. He's also trying to go in, and this is where I think that he is not successful and he needs to improve, and he's trying, and it's very difficult, is creating a system to reverse engineer those 30 million people into America and having 30 million people leave America. And if he does not do this, if he is not successful in removing those tens of millions of illegal aliens from our nation, the left, the globalists that wanted a global reset will win, because when you have 50 million people in America and then you layer on top of that 50 million, the birth rates of illegal aliens into our country, and this is UN data, I'm not coming out of the sky with it. Everything that I'm talking about is cited. The United Nations UN data shows that the people that are crossing our border reproduce at a 2 to 5 times the rate of U.S. citizens. What is the birth rate of U.S. citizens? Well, it's less than the replacement level. So we're losing Americans every year by death and old age with no replacement of birth. And then you're bringing in 50 million people that are reproducing up to 5 times the rate of ours. It is a bad math problem in America. To keep America safe again, how about do what we need to do to maintain America? And we have, as a nation, we have an obligation to her citizens to not have demographic upheaval. No one wants that. No one voted for this. Black Americans never voted to become the second largest minority in America. People don't know that. Hispanics have surpassed Black Americans in the population. Well, if it was just Hispanics and American Hispanics that were having a higher birth rate, no one really cares. They're Americans. But because of the decades of bringing illegal aliens from Central and South America and Mexico into America, Black Americans now have lost their leverage and their ability to have any kind of say in their own government, because they have been replaced. This is just statistical data. This has nothing to do with race or what my feelings are. Statistically, this is what our nation has done to America. Our government has done to America.
Now, I'd like us to talk on the deportation operation, which we addressed the record border crossings of criminal aliens under the prior administration. Do you think this is a wise decision from this administration?
Absolutely. And let's put into context what we're talking about across the border. Joe Biden took a subset of 7 million people on the non-detained docket. And what that means is he took people that were supposed to be deported and released them into America. 7 million out of the 12 million. Out of those 7 million, the Border Patrol recorded 662,000 criminals released. In that 662,000, there was over 15,000 murderers. Convicted murderers were released into America. There were 16,000 sexual predators, with over 11,000 of them were convicted rapists he released into America. I know that number to be 10 times that amount. You have Tren de Aragua, you have MS-13, you have Mexican Mafia, you have Russian Mafia, you have terrorists by the hundreds of thousands, not thousands, hundreds of thousands were arrested and released, called special interest aliens. So if Donald Trump does not accelerate the deportation of criminal aliens inside of our country, we are going to have a massive murder, rape epidemic. And let me just put it this way. Back in 2000, Steve King, who was a congressman from Iowa, came out with a study that showed at that time, illegal aliens were murdering or committing homicide against American citizens at a rate of 25 a day. That number now has got closer to 40 people a day. 40 Americans are being murdered or being killed by drunk driving, violent assault deaths, whatever. 40 every single day. So when I say there needs to be a massive urgency to remove these people from our country, it's an urgency needed because 40 of our brothers and sisters are being murdered or killed every day. And you say, well, that's not happened to me, so it's not that big a deal. If you think that you're immune from this invasion in this treason, you're a fool. It will reach out and grab you. I can go down in this discussion for the next hour and talk about one rape, one murder after another, and never even touch the tip of the iceberg on what has happened to our country at the hands of illegal aliens. So yes, Donald Trump has to remove them as fast as he can.
Yes, absolutely. Still emphasizing in terms of removing the aliens on designating cartels, including the dangerous Trend Aragua as foreign terrorist organizations. He also wants to use the Alien Enemies Act to remove them.
Yes, and I absolutely agree with this. I applaud him. And what Donald Trump is doing is he's using every apparatus at his disposal. It needs to be all hands on deck. So the Alien Enemies Act was to remove people that were here visiting in America that were from enemy nations. So Tren de Aragua, we're at war with them. They need to be gone. We're at a war. If you go across the globe, we're at a war, or we have some conflict with almost everybody. Now, that's a whole different subject on America, imperialism, America's involvement in stuff they shouldn't be involved with. But this is a national security issue. You either believe in law and order or you don't. And I want to make this very clear. The left, the Democrats, they don't want law and order. They don't want it. They brought in all these people, and now they're doing everything in their power through judges, the media, through the Democrat legislative process to stop deportation. Think of this. We deported 238 Tren de Aragua to El Salvador. These are hardcore, stone-cold killers, drug dealers, child sex trafficking, human trafficking people, the worst of the worst savages. And what does the media, the judges, and the Democrats want? They want to stop the deportation of sending them out of our country. Think of that. Think of the insanity that I just said. Why, even if I hated Biden, which I did, I couldn't stand him as an individual, as a person, a human, and I definitely couldn't tolerate him as a politician. He's corrupt. However, if he was deporting violent gang members out of my country, I'd be the first one going, hey, good job, old man. I can't stand you, but I'm all for that. They can't even agree that violent killers, child sex traffickers should be removed from our country. You and I talked about this a little before I came on. This is a good versus evil. And I will say this without hesitation. I believe the Democratic Party is embedded with evil, absolute evil. And they hate America. They are the enemy of America. And the Republicans, which I am registered Republican, however, I don't align with them. The Republican Party pays for every policy the Democrats have put in place through Speaker Johnson before Donald Trump came in office. This is an urgent emergency in America right now.
Right now, it's really an emergency issue. But really the role of the Department of Justice, which seeks the death penalty as the appropriate punishment for heinous crimes against humanity, including those who kill law enforcement officers and illegal migrants who maim and murder Americans. Do you think this is also a policy?
To have the stringest, your question is, do we have the stringest or should have the stringest punishment for these people that what they've done to America?
Yes. Now, this is the role of the Department of Justice to seek death penalty as the appropriate punishment for those who are involved in heinous crimes against humanity and also the Americans. What's your take?
Yes, I'm a Christian, but I don't subscribe to the watered down, impotent, feminine version of God. I believe God is, and they say, well, don't judge. Well, so somebody rapes and traffics a young child. Someone murders, rapes a woman or a young child. Someone kills a man, murders a man. I want the death penalty applied to them. Now, if it's a he said, she said, well, that's a whole different story. But if I have a 3-year-old girl that has semen from you, sir, inside of her vaginal canal, I need you within 30 seconds to tell me how your semen got into the 3-year-old girl that I found that was trafficked. The clock's ticking. Okay, 30 seconds are up. You have not, your semen's inside of her. You're now going to be death. You're killed. And I have no issue with that. I believe that the Department of Justice, which has been an absolute boondoggle, has been utilized to go after the political enemies, has to be now with Pam Bondi, aligned with the FBI, aligned with the executive branch, and then begin not only for the sex traffickers, the murders, but to the traitors that did this to America. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Mayorkas, Susan Powers, Obama, the Clintons. I want all of them brought to justice. Will that happen? I don't believe it will. I want it. As a former law enforcement officer, I look at all the evidence presented to me. I've written 2 books about it. I've done 2 documentaries. I have intense research in all this, plus 24 years of experience. I know who's the guilty parties. I have presented the evidence in my works, but do I believe it will happen? I don't know. But Donald Trump, I believe, has no other option except to go after these people and arrest them. And and I know what the penalty of treason is. I know what the maximum penalty of treason is death. And if that is what, when we arrest someone and they go through our judicial process and afforded their constitutional rights, when they're found guilty of that, then I want them put to death. Because if history has shown, if we do not punish the people that are murderers, rapists, and traitors, they'll just do it again. And that's history has proven that.
Absolutely. And who knows, they may even come after us. Now, the role of the armed forces, including the National Guard, will engage in border security, which is national security, and they will be deployed to the border to assist existing law enforcement personnel. Now, JJ, do you foresee positive changes or success in this regard?
Well, yes, but I want to go one step further. And I interviewed a gentleman yesterday named Colonel McGregor, who was on Tucker Carlson. He is he's a genius. He's actually a historical, just an incredible historian. And he reminded me, do you know that prior to World War I, that we had military on our border in Mexico, our Mexican border, military, full-blown army, everyone was there. Why do we not have that now? Why am I dependent on the National Guard? I don't want the National Guard. I want a military bases lining America's border. Therefore, no one crosses, like a zero tolerance, no one crosses. Why can't we have that? And that's a very important and direct question. Why can we not have that? You just spent $8 trillion in the Middle East to secure Middle Eastern countries' borders. You spent under Joe Biden at one time $380 million to secure 5 nations' border, help construct border barriers, and you spent nothing on America's borders. You left our borders completely wide open. You think that's by happenstance or stupidity or incompetence? No, they did it on purpose. So when you ask me, is the National Guard important? Sure, I worked with the National Guard, but they're ineffective. You need the military in conjunction with the border to shut our border down. It's not rocket science. You put manpower, tanks, turret towers, you put the wall, you build the wall, you have a no-man militarized zone that people can't cross. And then where you also have to do, ma'am, is you have to deploy the military inside America's cities and begin with the work of the FBI, DEA, and the Border Patrol and ICE to go find the 50 million people and remove them. If you do not do this through a use of force, then you are just half-assing everything. And why does America, in our wars, in our conflicts, in our political diplomacy, and with our border, and with law enforcement, why do we half-ass everything? Why? We never do full force domination. We're the biggest, strongest power in the world, and yet we allow third world nations to run us over and tell us what to do. I, for one, have had it. I'm tired of inflation skyrocketing. I'm tired of my economy nosediving. I'm tired of my dollar being worthless. Why? Because our political leaders have spent us into oblivion, stole all our money, gave it to foreign nationals. Do you know that the state of California is now tens of billions of dollars in the red? And do you know one of their expenditures last year was giving health care to illegal aliens that cost the state of California almost $10 billion. $10 billion for illegal aliens, and they didn't have enough money to hire more law enforcement and firefighters. They didn't have enough money to make sure the reservoirs had water in it. They didn't have enough money to have water in their fire hydrants for firefighters to stop fires like they had in Los Angeles. And yet you spent $10 billion with a B on illegal alien health care. My premiums just went up to almost $1,000 a month for my family for healthcare. I'm a former Border Patrol agent with government healthcare that I paid into for 2.5 decades. Now it costs me $1,000 a month to have healthcare for my family, but somebody from Europe, Africa, the Middle East can come into America and get free healthcare? What in the hell is going on in America that this has been allowed?
Right. Thanks for sharing that perspective, JJ. But I'd like you to clarify with the audience on legal and illegal immigrants.
Well, I think this is a great question, and thank you for asking it, because the left and the media and some Republicans, they love to conflate legal and illegal immigration. Because when someone like me says, well, I want the border secure, well, you're a racist, you're a xenophobe, you hate immigrants. And I'm like, okay, hold on a second. I'm talking about illegal immigration. Legal immigrants, legal immigration, some of the greatest patriots in America right now are legal immigrants. Why? Because they have lived in the other side of the world where there's oppression, no free speech, no property rights, no intellectual property rights. They're abused. Their economy sucks. No matter how hard they work, they're always going to remain poor. When they come to America and they have law and order and freedom and opportunities, they love our country. What people don't realize is that the United States of America legally immigrates 1.2 million people a year. Try to wrap your brain around that. 1.2 million people a year are legally immigrated into America. How great and how kind is America to do that number? Well, if you take all the nations on planet Earth and combine them, they all do not bring in 1.2 million legal immigrants into their nations. That's how kind and helpful America is. Now, if you don't believe that number, if you believe that number 1 point needs to be lower or higher, well, that's called the Congress has to make that decision. This is where the hypocrisy comes in. In order to raise that number, Congress has to go in front of each other, place a bill saying we're going to increase that number to 10 million. And then they vote on it. Then, me being a Border Patrol agent, then I go defend your law, meaning we allow 10 million people. People can't cross the border illegally between the ports of entry. But what people like AOC, Speaker Johnson, all the Republicans and the Democrats, when you say to them, wait a minute, you're calling me a racist, you're calling me a xenophobe, you say I'm a Nazi, but I'm enforcing your law, AOC. Your law is 1.2 million people cross the border illegally, and no one else can cross the border illegally. So I am enforcing your laws, but you're so grotesquely either stupid, incompetent, or you're grotesquely corrupt that you want me to ignore the law that you put in the books. If you think that America wants that 1.2 million to go to 10, 20, 30 million a year, good luck. Go try to pitch that in the halls of Congress and see how America pushes back. So America's telling you, I don't want any more illegal aliens, and yet you facilitated 30 million in the last 4 years. The hypocrisy of the people that run us. I believe we do not live in a republic anymore. I believe we live in a quasi-democracy / tyranny. I do.
JJ, do you like to talk about your new book and also your documentary series with the audience? You can go ahead and share that.
Sure. You can go to my website, jjcarrell.com, jjcarrell.com, and it has all the links to my Substack writings, both my books and my documentary series. So I have a documentary series called What is Treason Trafficked and What is Treason Invaded. The first one is about the Joe Biden administration that trafficked 550,000 unaccompanied alien children into America and has lost them all into sex trafficking and labor trafficking. The second documentary is called Invaded. It's about the open border invasion. Who did it? How did it happen? And then I just wrote my second book. My first book, Invaded, was published in July 2023. It was a bestseller on Amazon. And I just published my second book, Treason. And that hit the Amazon bestseller list for the last 3 weeks. It's been out 1 month. And why I don't know the right term to say. I don't know if it's pride, being proud of that book, Treason. I'm not happy about it. But I have professional validation on what I wrote in Treason, because everything Donald Trump is doing through his executive orders and executive actions and what Elon Musk is uncovering through Doge is validating absolutely everything that I wrote about. I wrote about the NGOs. I wrote about USAID. I wrote about the open borders and how they facilitated. And now all of that is being exposed and showing what I wrote, which my last edit was at the first week of President Trump's time in office. So it's that current, that relevant, that everything I wrote about is factually coming true and or has been validated as 100% honest in my book. So.
Thanks for sharing that with my audience. We sincerely wish you best of luck in this project. What
Thank
is
you.
your take or your advice for the Trump administration as regards the border issue?
If I had 1 minute, just literally 1 minute with somebody that I have the greatest respect for, Donald Trump, I would tell him, sir, you have got to put the military on the border and put the military in between the ports of and put them in the ports of entry as well. There needs to be a zero tolerance. No one crosses the border, north and south border, east and west. And then the last 30 seconds of my time with President Trump is I would say, sir, what you're doing in the interior is insufficient. You are arresting between 1,000 and 1,500 people a day. That number needs to increase to 10 to 15,000 a day and deported. And I encourage you, sir, to take your executive orders from the executive branch and ignore the courts, ignore the politicians, and do what you need to do. This is national security. National security trumps every other law, and you take that national security and you deport these 50 million people from America as fast as you can.
Absolutely. Thank you once again, J.J Carrell, for sharing your thoughts on today's show, especially on the headline about the present administration of Donald Trump, Make America Safe Again. It was worth while having this discussion with you and listening to your expertise and your profound insight on this topic of discussion. Sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, and on behalf of the audience of the Backstory with Omobola Stephen, we wish you best of luck in all of the projects that you embark upon. So we'd like to have your social media handles and more about your website so we can connect and learn more about you and what you've been up to.
Okay, thank you very much for your time and allowing me the time to speak so openly. And if you can just go to jjcarrell.com, it has all my links, and my social media links are there too, or you can just go straight to X at jjcarrell14. But everything is on my website, jjcarrell.com. Thank you very much.
Right. If you'd like to catch up with any missed episodes of the podcast, you can do so on any cross-promotion platforms or any podcast distribution platforms you bump into. And do have a great time listening to professionals share profound insight on topics and subjects that are related to government and politics and also the economy. I need you always to stay safe. I talk to you soon. Thank you once again, JJ, for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Have a great day.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe and leave us a review.